Hi, cool. Hello, 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 everyone. Welcome back to a Geek Vibes Nation review. It is good to be back because we haven't done this in a really long time.
No.
I am Tia and I am with the amazing Dom. Hello, Dom.
What up with everybody? It's been far too long since the collective of Geek Vibes just got back on like the podcast game. I mean, we're all doing our own things here and there, but it just feels like it's been a little bit disconnected. So it feels good to be back.
It does. And if I could offer a little behind the scenes, Dom was telling me beforehand that he hasn't used Zoom in a really long time, and I haven't either. So it's like, ooh, this is like dusting off like the old... um but we are talking about House of the Dragon season 2. I have my Targaryen necklace going on. I felt like that was appropriate for this.
I have a cordless Funko Pop around here somewhere.
Oh, Corliss is so cool.
Yeah.
I have to say, like, okay, so really quick before we get fully into it, there will be spoilers. I'm going to say this right now. There will be spoilers. This is season 2. It's ended. We had only 8 episodes as opposed to 10. And now we have to wait like what, 2 years for the next season.
Yeah.
So I'm going to try not to be upset by it. But I am a
I know
little.
people can age a lot in 2 years. Like I get the process takes a long time.
Yes.
And most of the stuff is in post, adding the dragons and making everything look realistic. But it's like a lot can happen in 2 years. What if one of the actors is just like, I don't want to act anymore. I'm good. And then you have to recast, there's a lot of things that can happen. And it's like, dang, like, I don't know.
There is a lot. And so to kind of go through quickly, like my bullet points of what happened in season 2, right? I wrote notes and everything. So pretty much this is what happened in season 2. Rhaenyra amassed her army. Damon went on a literal trip at Harrenhal. Helena didn't deserve anything bad that happened to her this season. Jacaerys served face the entire time. Aemon went crazy, and everyone pretty much realized that Aegon was not fit to be king. So I
Even
think,
Aegon.
yeah, I think I covered everything there.
Yeah, yeah.
um, I wanted to start with a little funniness. Did you have an MVP this season, like someone who stood out to you?
Yeah, I think my MVP was my Saria. She went
Yes.
from being like about to be either completely banished or killed to being like an unofficial hand to Rhaenyra. And she's like super intelligent anyway. So it was like I think is exactly where she's supposed to be. And you still don't know if you can completely trust her because the way she speaks is almost in riddles. It's like poetry when she speaks, but it's like she has like a demeanor where I guess she's lived a life where she doesn't trust anybody and they may
Mm-hmm.
not trust her. So she's always kind of a little bit at arm's reach. But I love her character though.
She definitely played the game well because, as you said, it didn't look good for her at the end of season 1. And now she is really like in the big leagues, right? I mean, she essentially saved Rhaenyra's life, warning her and everything, which
Yeah.
I don't know if I could fully trust her either, but how did you feel about that kiss that her and Rhaenyra like shared? And then one of like Rhaenyra's guards like walk in and they are so not subtle at all. They're like, oh shit.
Man, the sky's crazy. I don't know what's going on. No,
How'd you feel about that?
I had a feeling it was coming. They
Yeah.
were like there was always some kind of energy between them. He didn't know exactly what it was, but and I think too when you have this person who saved your life and you in turn had saved their life and there's just this back and forth. I think that they it was bound to happen. And despite what people think before our Americanized way of thinking. Everything was just fluid. It was just what it
Oh yeah.
is. And, so I'm sure there are some people who were like, I can't believe that happened. But I mean, that's what it is. It is what it is, man. And yeah, I foresee her being kind of this going forward, this unofficial like side piece because they all have them. But now
Yeah.
that Damon is gonna eventually come back, my Sarah gonna be off in the cut, and she'll probably look honestly, she might go back and forth between the both of them. We don't know. We're gonna see, but I don't. It's happened before.
I mean, so on that subject, that's like everyone on the internet was so shocked when they found out that Corliss had sons outside of like his marriage with Rhaenys. And I'm like, they all do. Like, they all do. I mean, don't get me wrong, like Corliss and Rhaenys, I thought had like a fantastic relationship. Like, probably the two like not toxic people in a
Yeah.
relationship in that show. But I'm like, why are you surprised? Like everyone in this world did.
Yup.
So and it is interesting to me because I don't know if like you've read the book, not to sound like a snob at all, but like I don't know if you read the books or like know kind of like what happens in like the literary
Look,
terms as
I
opposed to
haven't
this.
even watched Game of Thrones, okay? I'm very new to this
Oh,
world.
you haven't watched Game
Um,
of Thrones?
no, no. So this is all like, and of course, I know like the pop culture references. So like when I hear winter is coming, when I hear certain last names, Targaryen, Valerian, Lannister, I know a little bit to kind of go, oh, that's important. That's important. But yeah, I'm very new to Westeros. I'm like learning and
That
it now.
surprises me.
I know. Well, look, this is when this show started, it was in the thick of The Walking Dead. They
Mm-hmm.
came on the same day, and I think also I was watching at that time, like really into American Horror Story. So I didn't have any time
Mm.
for any more like super intricate shows. I was like, I can't do it. And at that time, my roommate, he was like, "Bro, you got to watch it." And I was like, "Well, you got to watch Walking Dead." And we both never watched each other's shows.
You were
So I'm just on
stubborn.
the
Okay.
yeah, yeah. So I'm on the outs. At some point, I'll try to what was it 8 seasons of Game of Thrones?
It's 8 seasons, and obviously the last season I'm sure you've heard isn't good.
Yeah.
So, but the first 7 seasons, in my opinion, are like some of the best TV I've ever seen. Some people dislike the seventh season. I don't think it's bad. Um, it's not lore breaking, say like the eighth season is, but
Right, right.
I only bring up because I got like super interested after season one. And again, we had 2 years in between. And so I'm like, there's a book called Fire and Blood, which is like the whole entire Targaryen history. So I'm like, let me go
Uh,
through this. So in that, Damon is the one with like the side pieces and everything like that. So it's interesting that they like flipped it around. It's like, oh, here Rhaenyra gets Mysteria instead this time. So that's the only reason why I brought it up. But I am a believer that you don't need to read the books or anything to enjoy
right, right,
something,
right,
you know?
right.
So, but cool. Mysteria definitely was an MVP this season. My MVP is Simon Strong. He is solid. He was literally eating his dinner when Damon came in and was like, I'm taking Harrenhal. And he was like, that's cool. You can do that. I'm not even going to argue with you.
You got a dragon, cool, man. Do what you do. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, do I want to die? No. And then he even got a whiff of Damon betraying Rhaenyra, and he was like, I have to let my queen know. And so
Yeah.
to me, Simon Strong, like it just shows me that the Strongs are a good family, except Larys Strong. He's the only
Yeah.
one. So,
Yeah, yeah. He's as John Bernthal put, he's a real one, man. Like he's a real one. Yeah, because as soon as he saw like, oh, yo,
mm-hmm.
call get the Ravens. We got some messages to send. Something don't smell right.
Well, Damon this whole season at first, because I'm like, he's going to Harrenhal, he's having all these weird visions and everything. And then he's trying to allude to the fact that obviously he wants the throne, but I at first thought there was more depth to his character, right? That like he realized that he was going to be there for Rhaenyra. So it was a little odd to see him having to go through this journey in season 2 to realize like, oh, I really need to put my shit aside and bend the knee to Rhaenyra. And it's obviously the Targaryens, it's all a weird dynamic. It's like that's your wife slash niece, it's your brother's kid and everything. Like, so but it was interesting that Damon saw the future, saw Daenerys and everything. And that's been like a huge thing in the Game of Thrones community as well. Cause it's like, oh, is Daenerys that important really to the story? It's like, yes, she is 100% important to the story. Damon literally sees her in the future and that like blows his whole world. So I thought that was interesting where they went with Damon this season. A lot of people online were kind of like, where's the Damon from season 1 who was like a badass ready to go to battle? He needed a moment is what I feel
Yeah,
like.
and he needed that, and he also had Alice messing with it, potentially being the one the whole time messing with his head, but he needed that because he lost his way. I mean, I forgot who he was talking to, but essentially, it was like those who seek to be in power are probably not the ones who need to be in power because as we saw with Alicent and Rhaenyra, they really didn't want war. Alicent kind of let her, lifted her hands, was like, I don't know what I can do anymore because no one was listening to her. But
Mm-hmm.
Rhaenyra was trying to avoid this whole thing while, Aemon, Aegon, Damon, they're just like, hey, we got beef. We bringing the dragons out, but first, let me get some dudes first because I don't want to die. So let them die, so I don't die. But yeah, he had to recalibrate because he was heading down a path where the first episode of the next season he probably would have died if he hadn't changed his ways because he became a complete asshole. First season, he was kind of that likable asshole. He was Logan. He's
Yeah.
Wolverine. You're like, he wants to do his own thing and whatever. He's kind of a jerk, but we kind of like him. And then he became like completely unreasonable and everybody hated him and he was doing things like he wasn't taking accountability for. So you go, you know what, Damon? Like, you got what you deserve, bro. Like, you're on this super weird mystic acid trip. And sometimes the ayahuasca, it kills your ego and you find what really matters. And he finds out that which he's still Damon. He was like, oh, I might die. Yeah, Rhaenyra, hey, yeah, you the queen, you're the queen.
I mean, listen,
So,
Alice literally told him what the first episode, you will die here. And I'm
yep.
not trying to do any spoilers from the books or anything, but it's gonna be crazy. Yeah, I'm glad that Damon got recalibrated because Rhaenyra needs support because it seemed like the Greens really were amassing more support for their side. Rhaenyra lost a lot with Rhaenys. And I definitely want to talk about that really quick. Like Rhaenys went out like an absolute badass. Um, I mean, just her it made me cry her looking at her dragon
I
and they were like, let's
know.
go back and everything. And I was like, oh, which made me go, I didn't like really mind Eamon's character in the first season. This season, I'm like, fuck that guy.
Yeah, I know. And when Maylee's turns around, I was like, man, this is it. This is like, and that's when like she was probably the most fit to rule because
Mm-hmm.
she could have left, and she was like, you know what, I have a job to do. If I don't go back and do this, um, you know, we're gonna die, or more people are gonna die that shouldn't die. And yeah, just her that look, and then just free falling, like, how does this happen?
She took her death and she was just like, let's do this and everything. And it she definitely was a voice of reason. Like when she told Rhaenyra that in the end people aren't even going to remember what they were fighting for.
Yep.
That was intense. And I was just like, and Corliss lost. I don't know. I was like, no, Rainey's.
And the fact that she was gonna accept his sons. You know, she when she grabbed his face and she was like, "Your
Oh,
mother must have been beautiful." And she's like, I'm okay with this. I wish I would have known. It kind
mhm.
of sucks, but like, cool. And then Corliss
So
don't even know.
so in that, I to give you a little background of Game of Thrones, right? Do you know the character Jon Snow? At least
Yeah,
have you
yeah.
heard of that? So like Jon Snow in Game of Thrones is the main one of the main character. Well, in the first, anyway, he's a bastard, right? Long
Okay,
story.
okay.
And Ned Stark, his wife, they're the Starks. Catelyn Stark never accepts Jon. She's pissed, like she's like, get out of my face, I hate you, I hate the fact that you even raised amongst my children, like, and everything. And so people on the internet was like, don't be a Catelyn, be a Rhaenys, because Rhaenys
Uh, yeah, that makes sense now.
yeah, so Rhaenys definitely was a real one. I miss her so
And I
much.
think that scene too, I think also kind of exposed that Aemon doesn't have the best control of Vagar.
No.
Vagar kind of does what she wants to do. And I mean, really, he only knows, like, he only says like two words, and that's like attack and turn. I don't know. Like, he doesn't seem like he knows what he's doing.
Well, it's also interesting because when Lucerys died in the finale of season one, he looked all like, oh no, what has been done? But then by the time we're in season two, Aemon has really lost it. Not only was he like happy to kill Rhaenys, but he tried to kill Aegon. He literally was like Dracarius. And a so I do not like Aegon at all, but a small part of me felt bad this season in the beginning because I'm like, he did kind of make a point with like the small folk. He did love his son, right?
Right.
And he genuinely thought that Eamon was there to help him. So things did not go well.
Look, I think we've learned throughout most of history that if they have an eye patch, you probably can't trust them.
No.
Like even Nick Fury, everybody's a little bit like, I don't know, man, because he does what he wants to do, and we don't ever know what's going on. You got an eye patch, bro. That hides secrets. Like this behind the eye patch is secrets.
I mean, we didn't know that he had a diamond in his eye until the finale of last season. I mean, look, he
Right.
was hiding that. So,
Exactly.
um, so I wanted to move on to what is kind of my favorite scene in the entire second season was the claiming of Vermithor. Um, that was insane to me because Rhaenyra essentially brought all these people to die to
Yeah.
Vermithor. But then I really liked Hugh Hammer claiming him. So I mean, what did you feel with that scene?
That whole thing was it was I think that was the beginning of like an ascension because you have all like the dragon keepers like, you know what, we're not with this. This is supposed to be sacred and you're bringing all these unworthy people, so they leave. And then as Rhaenyra has to kind of like take charge, and this is the first time I think she really has to like do it all by herself. And
Mm-hmm.
as she's trying to calm Vermithor, you see the shoulders relax. She's like, "Oh, I'm doing this." So there's this confidence that explodes out of her. And then Hugh, I think, was like, I think he always knew that he was destined for something big, which is why he didn't hesitate, despite his wife getting pissed. Like, no, I'm okay with this life. And he's like, look, I know like we're destined to be higher. We're gonna get out. We're gonna do the Jeffersons, you know what I mean? We're moving on up, damn it. And no, it was cool to see that like I think he realized that dragons respect certain things, and one of those is bravery and confidence. So once he pushes the other woman out the way and he's like, hey, you're gonna kill me, kill me. Roberto's like, oh, okay. You okay. No, it was really cool to see. And that's the coolest looking dragon. Like, and it's crazy that seeing like the scale of how big they are compared to the people is nuts. But yeah, I mean, if I could be anybody in that show, just because he got that dragon, I'd be Hugh.
It was the coolest thing where he like literally screams. He's like, "Come on!" And Verminthor's like, "Oh, okay, that's fine." But
Oh, you cute.
yeah,
Okay.
the whole claiming of the dragons this season was interesting because then you had Sea Smoke, who was like, "I'll just go find my guy, okay?" Like I don't know who this guy is that you brought to me. I'm gonna barbecue him, and then and poor Alan is just like, "What's happening? What's
I know it's like a
happening?"
horror movie. That could have been like a whole half of an episode of like just him trying to escape, and then C Smoke just like, bro, like, no, I want to love you. Like, what do you come here?
Right? Like, come on, man. This is like you don't want to get on board. I mean, most people do. You come on. So I thought that was funny. And like Rhaenyra, like, why are you here? And he's like, bro, this dragon just found me. He kidnapped me essentially. So I thought that was funny. And then you have Ulf with I think Silverwing was her
Yeah,
name.
yeah,
And she was just kind of like, okay, that's fine. But
yeah.
but Ulf is an asshole. I'm sorry. I love Jacaerys. So you being like mean to Jacaerys and about his hair and everything like that, that is the prince. You need to
I
stop
know. I
this.
was I was confused because if I'm not mistaken, when Ulf is like trying to run and hide, he steps on an egg,
He
and I
does.
was like, "You're gonna die now," but the opposite. And I don't know if it was just like, "Oh, you smell like a dragon, so maybe I shouldn't kill you." But you would think that Silverwing was like, "Hold up, that's one of the kids, and you just unless it was like a stillborn egg that was not gonna be. I don't know. I just thought like he's dead for sure, and I can't tell if I like this guy because he clearly doesn't care about any of the rules or the decorum or anything. But at the same time, if we were in that same kind of state where we know that we're have royal blood in us and we're not getting accepted for our whole entire lives to all of a sudden being thrust in a situation where they need you more than you need them. I don't know if I wouldn't act the same way. Like, bring me more of those little birds. Yeah, they're delicious. No more. And I'm gonna put my feet on your table and I'm gonna sit in your chair because I'm probably gonna die anyway. So I don't know.
It's an interesting dynamic because when Rhaenyra and Jacaerys were all like, "Ooh, it's never been done," like having like these people get and it's like a dragon doesn't care if you were born out of wedlock; they
Yeah.
just smell Targaryen blood and they're like, "Oh,
Yep.
cool, come
Yep.
on board." So, that overall, I liked this season. It definitely felt like we're obviously preparing for the next season, the real meat and potatoes that are happening.
Yeah.
I did have a few things that I disliked about this season, but I want to go to you and ask, like, was there anything that you particularly didn't say like about it?
Well, so since I'm not familiar with the way the structure of the Game of Thrones stuff works,
Mm-hmm.
I I kind of just was going with the flow for the most part. However, I did expect the last episode to be at least the beginning of a battle. Like I love the build up and I loved all the preparation of trying to get more people on your side and hey, if you're not on my side, your head's rolling literally. But yeah, I thought the finale, I was like, oh, it's gonna be the beginning because I knew we weren't gonna get all out war, but I figured it'd be like the at least the beginning of a battle. And so I liked the episode, but I was like, I was a little let down. I was like, I expected a little something. Give me a taste of what's gonna come, especially since we have to wait 2 years. So that was the only thing for me because again, I'm unfamiliar. I'm on the roller coaster for the first time, just kind of going with the flow. So
it,
yeah, I just wish it would have been a little bit more.
I mean, Game of Thrones was kind of both, right? Like Daenerys, right? She literally takes her like 6 seasons to get back to Westeros. So you could say like, oh, that took a while. But at the same time, every season had a huge battle. Like every season had something crazy going on. So it what I guess our craziness was Rhaenys dying.
Right.
Um but it just kind of felt like season one had so many time skips. Maybe
Yeah.
we could have had a time skip here just to really get into it. It's like, okay, yes, you have moved the pawn pieces, and now we have to wait 2 years to really see things happening.
Yeah, it was all, I think this, I guess this season was all about character development. Like we got so much like individual things with almost every character that is important, even with, you know, Adam and Alan, who at first I was like, I knew they had to be somewhat important because they kept showing them having conversations,
Yeah.
but they still are somewhat of these background characters. But we got a lot of insight into who they are, which I guess relates more to Corliss. But I mean, me hearing people all the time talking about how crazy the Game of Thrones seasons were, this one felt like, compared to what I've heard and the clips I've seen in Game of Thrones, and even the first season of House of Dragon, where is like the rated R version. This was more like the PG-13 season. It seems like.
It definitely was. And I guess they're like, well, we really want to do all the really cool stuff maybe in season three. And it's like, okay, fine. There are plenty of things that they could have done in season two to make it a little crazier. Again, things happen a lot in Game of Thrones. My aunt was talking about House of the Dragon, and she was like, don't tell me who dies. And I'm like, well, you have to expect that a lot of people are going to die. I mean, in Game of Thrones, so many people died. Like it's kind of like The Walking Dead. Don't have favorites because
Yeah.
people are gonna die in the most horrific of ways, and that's how it was in Game of Thrones. So I do wish that it was more bombastic a little. I mean, we sign up for the dragons. We want to see the
Yeah.
crazy dragons.
Right.
Um, for me, one of the biggest letdowns of the season was, you know how in the beginning in the first episode you see Jacaerys talking to Craig Stark, and it's a very brief scene.
Yeah.
In the not to, in the books, they talk about how like Jacaerys is, because another thing is like in this world you don't kind of realize it, but so much time goes on in between, right? Like because it takes so long to
Right.
get places. So like in the books, they're like, oh, Jacaerys spent like an entire like 3 months there, and they like became friends and they drank, and Craig and Stark was like, you're like a brother to me. I kind of wanted to see that. I was like,
Yeah.
let's see this
Yeah.
friendship between the two of them and understand why like Craig Stark feels like he's so loyal to Jacaerys and Rhaenyra. I mean, in general, like that's a big thing in Game of Thrones. Like the Starks never forget an oath. They are like almost to a fault the most noble
Um,
house.
right.
You gotta watch Game of Thrones just so
And no,
you
and it
know.
would, well, and to that point too, I think it would make Jace, because to me, sometimes he just felt whiny.
Yeah,
But you
well,
talking about that makes me realize that, oh, because he's been spending time like watching, how people run a successful house, and he realizes his is like in shambles. So it makes more sense now.
well, and to that point, I did feel a little like it was just Saras's idea to find people outside. And then once they did, he was like, but what does that say about me? Look at me. I'm clearly like not, Laenor's child. I'm very clearly like Harwin Strong's kid. And now like people will even more so question that. It's like, but you were the one who suggested to your mom to find people. So that doesn't make sense.
Maybe he didn't think it was gonna work. He was like, "Look, I got this idea. Oh shit, it worked. I didn't think it was gonna work. Backfired on me."
Yeah, so he definitely was a little whiny this season. I'm hoping for more next season.
Yeah,
Um, and again, it gives you plenty of time to watch Game of Thrones. Just
that's
saying.
true. That is true. That is
But
true.
um, as someone who say like doesn't you're very new to this world and everything, you don't because people act like this is real history. Like I have gone through such deep dives with YouTube videos and people talk about the history as if it happened in real life. And so um and I'm still I wouldn't say I'm like an expert or anything, but like as someone who's new to this, what do you want to see happen in the next season?
I really just want to see. I need the battles, but I also want to see Rhaenyra fully take charge. She's
Mm.
slowly getting to that point because I think she is the most fit that's alive, at least, because she doesn't want war, but she knows like, okay, if it has to happen, how can we do it with, the least amount of casualties of like the people who are not part of this war? Um, and I really want to see what happens with Damon. How he is he going to attempt to pacify himself a little bit, or is he going to go back to what we saw in the first season and he's just like this general who's out there slinging the sword around because that's what he's really good at. But other than that, I mean, I'm just along for the ride. So wherever it takes me, it takes me. I'm cool with it.
At least the writers know how this story should end. That was a big thing with Game of Thrones is that George R. R. Martin has only wrote the books up to like the fourth season. After that, it was all the own writers like doing their own
Yeah.
thing, and they
I feel
clearly
bad for Martin a little bit because he can only write so much. There's no, I mean, because this stuff is intricate. I mean, the fact that you said like this latest one is like the history of this family. This guy has to do a lot of like, I mean, not research through his own book because he doesn't want to like repeat something or say the wrong names. And then it's a lot to do. And I know I saw not too long ago there was a conversation I think with him and or he was talking about it, him and Stephen King about the writing process. And Stephen was like, "Oh yeah, I write like a page or so a day," and he's like, "Oh,
yeah.
I don't do that."
Well, I mean, listen, and Stephen King is a phenomenal writer. I'm not trying to like dissuade, but Stephen King's like, a car that turns sentient and runs people over. Cool. George R. R. Martin is like, I have to do the whole history of because it's not just the Targaryens, like every house, he's like,
I
and
know.
this is the lineage of the Starks, and this is the lineage of the Hightowers, and it's like
Yep.
it takes a lot,
And I bet
but
you it's really weird. He has to write a lot of incest. I'm sure that like, okay. So do I really want them to
it
the people want to see it, I guess. So I don't know.
the
With
fun
his niece, and
the funniest thing to me is like because I watched Game of Thrones and like the big thing in Game of Thrones is like you have these two characters, Cersei and Jaime Lannister, and they're twins, but they're doing the deed together. And um it's so taboo and it's like so, like everyone's like that's disgusting like in the show themselves, right?
right.
But then with the Targaryens, you're like, oh no, we're like totally cool with it. Like sister and brother, niece and nephew, uncle and niece. It's fine. So the Targaryens, for some reason, get like a special rule. They can get away with it, apparently.
Right.
So yeah, I like you, I want more action, obviously, in season three. I think I heard that this is supposed to be a 4 season show.
Yeah, that's
So
what I heard too.
I'm hoping that season three is like the big stuff, and then maybe season four is like kind of like the fallout of it. I'm interested in seeing like where they go with it because there's definitely a lot of changes they made in this season as opposed to like what has already been written and all that, especially like with Alicent finding out that Viserys meant like not your Aegon. I thought that was funny. And then there's that scene where Alicent's like, oh, I should be ruling while Aegon is like held up, and they're like, but you're a woman. And I'm kind of like, See, Allison, it doesn't feel good, does it?
Hmm.
So, but so if you had to give out of 10 a like grade for this season, what would you give
That's a good question.
it?
I think I'd probably give it somewhere around like a 7.5.
I think that's fair. I was gonna give it a seven
Yeah.
and a half too. Like, because
Yeah.
I didn't think it was bad. I wasn't sitting there
No.
like I wasn't saying like this is terrible. I hate it. And I certainly want so I've been watching it week by week. Now I certainly want to watch it all the way through to kind of see how it all blends with each other.
Yeah.
But just for the fact that it wasn't as exciting as I wanted it to be, that's kind of where I am.
Yeah, and I joined a Facebook group where they were talking about the show, and then I started to kind of realize that I couldn't I couldn't interject as much as I wanted to because these people are fans of Game of Thrones, so they know how this structure plays out a lot more than I do. Because I'm like, oh no, when you're watching the show, you gotta let things build, and you gotta do these things, and but then I'm like, oh, well, you guys know how it usually is run, and if this isn't the way, it's not the way.
It was different because with Game of Thrones you had all these different like factors, whereas with House of the Dragon it's more solely the Targaryens. So I think
Yeah.
that also is like why it was okay stretching things out more because we have the Lannisters, we have the Starks, and then you also have to figure out what's happening with Dorne and then the White Walkers and then this and then that. It's like, yeah, there was a lot going on. Here it's like we're just seeing a bunch of siblings like fight with each other, but with
That's true.
like dragons.
It's like the evil Brady Bunch.
I That's a whole nother story. It's like maybe if Viserys was a decent dad, we wouldn't have this problem, but that's a story for another day. So
Oh, and to add too, I do look forward to seeing it get more kind of mystical, maybe.
mm-hmm.
Because since we have Alice doing what she does, and we see the tree, and then seeing what the well, I don't know what I don't know how far into the story the White Walkers actually make an entrance. I know they're in the Game of Thrones, but just seeing stuff that is more supernatural, even though we have dragons, but they seem to be more commonplace, like seeing a bear randomly. But to see something more mystical would be kind of cool too.
Yeah, and I thought that was interesting, especially at the beginning of the season, Craig and Stark explaining like about the White Walkers, kind of, and that was always kind of the thing with Game of Thrones. It's like you think that this whole game of chess with the like Iron Throne is what's important. No, what's beyond that wall, that's what's important. So
Right.
I thought that was interesting, and I'm very much hoping to get more of that, as you said, in season 3 and getting more mysticism because this is a crazy world that they're living in. um but overall I'm looking forward to season 3. I am a huge fan of this world. And I'm glad that you watched it, even though you didn't watch Game of Thrones, so that we could at least do
Yeah.
this. Um, and please, I want, since this is our first Zoom call in forever, please remind the viewers who you are, where they can find you, what you got going on.
Yeah, we got the TikTok popping. So if you look up Geek Vibes Nation on TikTok, go on there, and we're look we dropped the ball a little bit like a year or two ago, but we have a steady inflow of videos now. So go on there, do your thing. I'm trying to drop a review at least once or twice a week. The screenings are a little dry right now, but I'm still seeing movies. So I'll pop up, maybe a Borderlands one. I don't know. The movie's it's not great. But yeah, Don Fisher. Just if you Geek Vibes Nation, if you look up on the Popcorn People podcast, me and Ricky, who also contributes to Geek Vibes Nation, um, and I don't social media is weird for me. I'm more of a watcher. I like to use the world as my muse. So every once in a while I'll say something, maybe. So if you want to follow me, King underscore fish on I'm not saying X, it's Twitter. Um, the Don Fisher on Instagram, and then I have a Facebook page that I don't use. But if you want to follow me on there, you can do that too.
I feel that with social media, I have really pulled back from it. I will admit I am a scroller of TikTok, but as far as making things or posting, I'm like, "Ugh, I'm
It's
so old right
stressful.
now. I can't do this." But you did something right after you saw Deadpool and Wolverine,
Oh,
and you were really funny, and then Ricky like commented it in or something. I don't know. It was just funny from a observational view where I was like, they're hilarious together. So
because
you
we're so opposed on a lot, especially recently. We've been so opposed on a lot of different movies. I've liked things, and he's like, "It's trash." I'm like, "What are you talking about?"
oh my god, that I because it's been a long time since I spoke to Ricky, but there was a movie I remember we like did and I liked it and he was like, oh, Uncut Gems. He has such a vendetta against that
Yeah,
movie.
yeah. Now there was one of the episodes recently, I think it was during like Long Legs, and I liked the movie, and he was like, I'm questioning whether we should do this podcast anymore. I was like, look,
Oh
man,
man.
you're not a horror fan like I am.
Well, please, everyone, make sure you check that out and everything. You and Ricky definitely have a great like chemistry together. Um, I have been really working with our friends over at the Kind of Nerdy Girls. KJ has done some interviews for us. She actually did interview Benjamin Byram Davis for Borderlands recently. That's on the Geek Vibes Nation YouTube page. But you can definitely check me out there. I've been doing a few videos here. I don't show my face a lot anymore. I've kind of been really into like doing videos where then I just like do vocals and then like edit myself. So check that out. But if you're not subscribed to this YouTube channel, please make sure you do so. Always check out Geek Vibes Nation. Kanan really kills it on Twitter. So make sure you check that out. I believe we're covering D3. No, not D3. Sorry,
D23.
D23. We covered San Diego Comic-Con. We will cover it all. So please make sure you check that out. And Dom, thank you for doing this with me.
Yep.
I appreciate
Yeah,
it.
yeah. Had a good
and
time.
and there's my dogs starting to bark right now. So anyway, I will talk to you guys all later. Until next time. Bye.
Peace.